want to apologize for my voice today. It sounds sort of like I'm a walrus. Allergies or cold or that kind of thing. We hope it's not a cold because it definitely kissed Jack a lot. So we're hoping it's not that, but that's what it is. Just giving you my verse ahead of time, so when I launch in, you're ready to roll. Because last week I noticed that, wait, what? He's looking through the Bible now. John 12 is where I'm at today. John 12:12 is where I'm starting today. My feedback. Okay. John 12:12 is where I'm starting today in the Bible. So, first of all, I have started a weird habit. And I call it a weird habit because in no way am I advocating that you should do the same thing. Yes, it might be beneficial to some, but every time I brought it up at work, just offhand, people look at me like, oh, you're one of those people. So Jack started waking up about at 4 before I went back to work. And he happened to wake up at 4 on the Monday that I decided to go back to school. And so I get up, and I'm burping Jack, and then of course he got the hiccups, which is, by the way, hilarious because his entire body convulses. It's the cutest thing ever. But then after we got the hiccups settled, I realized here I am sitting here awake, and it's 4 in the morning, and I'm going. And so I should backtrack. A normal person would have gone, oh, I get another hour of sleep till I really have to wake up to go to work and that kind of thing. Well, I decided to run. And so I decided to get my stuff on, I decided to lace up, and I decided to head out the door and bust out for a run. And Carrie Ann had this concerned look on her face and went, are you sure you want to do that? Or are you going to feel this later? Or is this going to be a good thing? And I went, really what I was thinking as a man, so ladies, you probably already know this if you have a husband, but as a man, it's not that we know the right way to do it. We understand that there probably is a better and more correct way to do the thing that we're doing in front of you, but we want to show you that we can do it this way if we really want to. That's what we want to show you. At least that's me. No one else is nodding in agreement. All the rest of the guys are not. Just me. Okay. So I decided to go out for a run, and I was thinking, I'm gonna. And at first it was kind of eerie because I have a GPS watch. And I ended up going straight and turning right on this one street. And I was kind of thinking in my own thoughts and that kind of thing. And I realized all of a sudden, to my horror, that, maybe not horror at first, but at first I was going, this is interesting. I was looking forward, and you know that moment when you know what you should see in front of you because you've run all these streets all your life in Canby, and then all of a sudden you're looking forward and the street that should be there is not there. Well, what had happened is I think I had fallen asleep and done a 1-block radius, and then I was standing exactly where I had been around about 2 minutes ago or something like that. So I was standing there and I went, okay, well that's weird. And sure enough, when I looked at the GPS printout, that's kind of the way it went. Well, that was kind of strange, but after we got done with that, things were pretty smooth. And I began to notice some things. I kept doing this throughout the entire week, and I've done this now for 2 weeks. I've gotten up at 4 and I went running. And it's the eeriest thing in the world to go out into a world that doesn't have any people in it and go do something that normal people would do when there are people out. Let me explain. So as I'm going along, I at one point began to cross 99. Well, 99E, you hit the little thing, and the little guy that's walking shows up and everything. Well, I noticed I've been waiting there for a while because it's a very long light, and then I kind of thought to myself, how silly is it that I'm standing here on a street, and now no car has gone by. It must have been 5 minutes. No car went by on 99E. I could have walked out in the middle of 99E, sat down, and closed my eyes, and nothing would have happened to me. And I was standing here just thinking and I'm waiting for this arbitrary rule that says I should wait till this guy shows up and then I get to cross the street. But yet I haven't seen a single car. Now I'm not saying to break the rules because I did follow the rules, and as soon as the guy showed up, then I went. But I was thinking to myself, how silly is that? And then I kept running, and I went by little businesses and that kind of thing, places that are usually the hub of commerce and are usually bustling with people and life and activities, and completely blank windows. You could see inside of every building. There was nothing going on. It was a ghost town, complete ghost town. I must have seen 2 cars on my first run. Just a complete ghost town. And the cars that I saw were actually driving pretty much in the middle of the street and had this double take moment where they went, oh gosh, there's a person, and kind of had to swerve to miss me. And of course I'm reflected and all that good stuff, so that doesn't happen. But it was just the weirdest situation that I could have encountered early in the morning. And I've started realizing that I kind of like it. It's kind of relaxing to me. I'm a little bit weird, but it's kind of relaxing to me. And then I began to think to myself, why is that relaxing? Having, just getting up at early o'clock in the morning and just going and doing something that's hard. And I've thought about it for about a week, and I think the reason is we live in a world where something is always happening. Something is always going on, something is always crossing my mind, my eyes. I'm always reading something or figuring something out. I even, sitting and reading a book, which I wanted to do this weekend. I finally did it. Jack slept for a whole, I think it was like 20 minutes, and I read a book for 20 minutes. It was so great. But I was sitting there, and in that 20 minutes, I started getting nervous. And I've never had this happen before, and maybe it's because of having the needs of a baby now, and having, the needs of a job, and doing this as well, and writing sermons and that kind of thing. But I felt like I needed to be doing something more productive. And I was sitting there going, why are you reading a book, silly, when you could be doing something that's actually productive? And I was like, isn't I was thinking, isn't reading a book productive? And I don't know, but why did it make me uncomfortable? I wanted to check my phone, and I was like, why are you checking your phone? You've preached against this before. And then I wanted to go and, I was like, well, I could get something ready, and, Jack is going to be awake here in a little while. I could go and do this thing before he wakes up. And man, I started getting so nervous, just so nervous. And when I got up in the morning, at first, I got nervous because I was looking around and I was going, nothing is happening. Things need to be happening. And then I came upon kind of the realization that in living in an e-commerce world, a place where things are always getting delivered to us, that's just what we've acclimated ourselves to doing. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It comes with kind of an industrialized society, but it is what it is. And so I did a little bit of research. I don't want to overwhelm you with numbers here, but here are some numbers. Amazon. Have you ever wondered, I've wondered this, I don't know if you have. Have you ever wondered how many, you see the FedEx truck going by, or you see the UPS truck come up the street, and you're wondering how many packages are delivered by Amazon every day? I've wondered that. And it's 1.6 million throughout just the US. Just the US. 1.6 million packages every day. Now, that doesn't seem crazy. It probably doesn't. You're going, oh, of course, a lot of people buy a lot of things, and a lot of things get delivered every day. That's not weird, Jeff. What are you talking about? Well, have you ever wondered to yourself after you've wondered, how deep is Crater Lake again? I forgot. Or someone comes and asks you, like, hey, do you know how many times a beluga whale surfaces in 5 minutes? And you've wondered to yourself, I should know these kind of things. Hey, Google. And you've said the words, hey, Google. Sorry if anyone's phone just went off. And you've wondered, how many times do people do that every day? Well, I did the research, and it's more alarming than the Amazon thing. It's 63 Google searches. 63,000. Sorry, zeros. 63,000 Google searches a second. Every second, 63,000 people say, hey, Google, and all of a sudden their phone is triggered into doing things, and they ask about the weather, they ask about sports, they ask about, my phone now doesn't even ask if I want to know things. Like I really need to turn this off. I get notifications on my watch. It's actually kind of self-defense that at work, if Carrie Ann says something like, danger, warning, warning, come home, or something like that, it'll pop up on my phone, or my watch, which was really a lifesaver when Jack actually came, because I went, oh, Carrie Ann's calling me, and I walked over to my desk, opened the desk, and got out the phone. So that's why I tell myself that's why I started doing this thing. But it'll go off, and I'll go, ooh, a notification. I'll look down. CBS Sports says that Russell Wilson might go to New York. Now, at first, I'm going like, why do I need to know that? And then secondly, I go, oh, that's kind of a downer. And I didn't want to know that information. I could have looked that up later and had that downer, later. Right, Ron? So, it's just, my phone doesn't even ask anymore. It just assumes, oh, you haven't looked at me in a little while. You might want to know something. Now, that's just the society that we live in. A lot of us haven't grown up in that, but that's kind of just been building, and eventually, since we're people and people adapt, we've adapted to that. Now we feel comfortable with it. I feel uncomfortable if I don't know the 10-day forecast. That was kind of weird for someone even, 10 years ago. That wasn't something that you would have thought anything about. Well, the people in our story today are kind of the same way. They want something, and they want it now. And it's not information like us. It's not, Amazon packages. It's not this next thing that's going to make my life that much more simple and definitely won't break in 3 weeks. It was the fact that they wanted to be delivered from the Romans. And it had been, to take their side, it had been quite a while. It had been a lot of persecution. And if you're under Roman rule, things are not the greatest. And so they definitely wanted someone to deliver them. And that's what they thought they needed. They absolutely needed that thing to happen. And that would solve every problem. And today, when Jesus enters Jerusalem, he is not going to solve that problem at all. So it's a weird contrast. It's people celebrating for the incorrect reason. And Jesus wasn't sitting there smirking on the donkey as he rode in. He was probably thinking, well, that's just too bad, isn't it? That you guys actually don't know why I'm here. So here we go. John 12:12. Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a young donkey, is how it's highlighted in my Bible. And if you want to find it in other places, it's also in Matthew 21, it's in Mark 11, and it's in Luke 19. So everybody writes about it. It was a big deal. The next day, the great crowd that had come for the feast heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. I'm going to do the annoying teacher thing and stop right there. And I'm going to tell you that the feast they're talking about is most likely Passover as far as I could figure. It was a few days before Passover, and everyone had gathered. Everybody comes throughout the land to gather for Passover. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." Now, maybe in your Bible it's a little bit different, but in my Bible, and in 3 other translations I could find, I use NIV, when it says, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," he is not capitalized. He is usually always, 99.9% of the time, when you are talking about Jesus, the Son of God, or you are talking about the great I Am, they are both capitalized. That tells me something immediately. It tells me these people might not have understood that Jesus was the Messiah. That's pretty interesting. Jesus found a young donkey and sat upon it. As it is written, "Do not be afraid, O daughter of Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt." Now, I think in Luke, as I was reading, I could have gone with Luke very easily, because Luke gives the backstory to this. Apparently, Jesus, if you know the story, apparently Jesus wanted a donkey in order to ride into town on. So he said, hey, there's going to be a donkey tied up near his house. You're going to go to him and you're going to say, hey, the Lord needs this donkey, is all you're going to say. And the guy will just give you the donkey. And so I could have gone with that. I thought I would go with this a little bit more just because it tells a bit more of the backstory. This was already foretold previously in Scripture that Jesus would show up this way. So he's already fulfilling prophecy. He's already coming in this way. At first, his disciples, in verse 16, did not understand all of this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that all these things had been written about him and that they had done these things to him. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had given this miraculous sign, went out to meet him. So the Pharisees said to one another, "See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world has gone after him." Now, I did a little bit of research on verse around 13 when they're all, I guess, saying, "Hosanna, isn't this so great that Jesus is here," and that kind of thing. And this is kind of what the research says. The people who were praising God for giving them a king had the wrong idea about Jesus. They were sure he would be a national leader who would restore their nation to its former glory. And thus, they were deaf to the words that their prophets and blind to Jesus' real mission. When it became apparent that Jesus was not going to fulfill their hopes, many people turned against him. Now, kind of coming back into myself and who I am and where I come from belief-wise, that's kind of the pattern that I follow all the time, or that I used to follow. I think I'm getting a little bit better about it, but I used to follow that pattern all the time. I always think of an immediate problem. There's always an immediate thing going on. Right now, during this time of the year, my 6th graders have decided that they're little teenagers, and so now we're kind of butting heads. If I ask them, hey, could you take off that hat? Why? Well, because if you don't take off your hat, I'm going to take it off for you. It's getting that way. And so I kind of have to think to myself, around lunch, my anger level is, and then kind of after lunch, my anger level is like this. And, then there's that one kid that usually wouldn't do this, but they become a little teenager because the puberty has hit. And they come in and they'll come in and they think they're funny, and they've got the hat on, and they don't realize that 6 other kids have already done this, and that Mr. Barrett's about to get the next kid that does this. And they show up and they say something like, Mr. Barrett, I got my hat on today, what you gonna do? And I am not in the mood to joke about that. And they don't realize that, and that's kind of, so I pray every day, Jesus, allow me to keep my hands in my pockets and a smile on my face. And I kind of just continue to pray for that because I'm going like, this is the real problem. This is the problem showing up right now. I need patience to deal with these kids. When actually, that's not what Jesus wants to teach me at all. That is the quick fix. That's like if I have a glaring sinus infection, which I really hope I don't. If I go and take, Tylenol for it, all of a sudden, miraculously, my body's neuroreceptors tell me, hey dude, the pain has gone away. You're healed, right? No, I am not healed. My symptoms have gone away. My symptoms are gone. But no, I still have a sinus infection, and I would have pain, except I've dimmed it out. And I guess if God gave me more patience, I'd just be this really big, fluffy guy that's just like, oh, you and your hats and that kind of thing. Oh, it's okay. You can stick your gum to the inside of your desk and then convince someone next to you to take it and eat it. And, it's definitely okay. That 15 homework assignments that you haven't done yet, that's totally fine. But that's not my job. That is not my job. If I were to simply just relax and go, it's fine. What am I really going to teach you anyway toward the end of the year? Can't we all just be friends? I am not there to be a student's friend. That's not my job. And so God is really trying to give me the tools in order to be an ambassador for Him in my classroom, to raise resilient kids, in my classroom. That now I say raise instead of teach because they spend a lot of time with me. It might as well be raising. To teach and raise resilient kids that actually can solve their own issues and manage themselves. That is what I am trying to accomplish. So God, in fact, should give me a little bit of patience, and He does. He's like, okay, I'll lighten your load just slightly, but you need to learn how to get through this as well. And that's happened, of course, when I've had students, early on that were extremely hard to deal with. I've had students that have called me some very colorful names while storming out of my classroom. And I've had to then deal with the 3 kids next to me. These, after I turn back to them, it looks like they have halos on their head. They're so amazing. And I have to deal with the things that they have questions on because they will have looked at that happening and gone, wow, that was, whoa. Okay, and they're kind of, floored by what's going on. I'll have to come by and say, hey, it's all right, I got it under control. Hey, what do you need help with? And I have to be able to change gears like that. Well, early on, I was not able to change gears like that. I would soak these things up like a sponge, and I would be seething underneath by the time the day is done. So I have to be able to deal with that, but I also have to help that student that just left my room instead of hate that student that just left my room. I have to help them to learn to manage themselves, to learn what got them set off in the first place, to, I guess help them learn to take some responsibility. I have to be able to do that too. So God's continually working on me. He's not just going to solve my problem by giving me all the patience in the world. That's not the way it works. Well, God wasn't going to give these people a king. They didn't need a king. If you were to look back at our history as believers, the first thing that you probably don't think about, right, when you want to explain your faith to someone is, wow, I'm so glad that the Jews aren't under the Romans anymore. No, you don't say that. Nobody cares. Literally nobody cares. And you don't even probably think about the Egyptians. Yeah, the Egyptian people also oppressed the Jews. But the first thing we think about as believers, when we tell someone, if someone asks us about our faith and goes, hey, I want what you have. What's going on in your life? Why are you always so upbeat? Why are things always so, why do you always have the word to solve this or want to pray with me when I've been so terrible to you? You don't say, well, you see, I'm just so glad that the Jews are out of Egypt. You don't say that. That wouldn't make any sense, would it? Who even cares? That's part of the relational story of God, but who cares about that? What we would say is that, look, there is a God who came and became one of us and died a sinner's death, was horribly mutilated for you and I, but did it because he loved you that much. He would do it again. He sacrificed his very only son to save you and I. Do you want that kind of God fighting for you in your life? That's the story we give. That's the king they needed. That's what this is all about. So I go back to John 12. This is verse 20. Jesus explains why he must die right here. Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the feast. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. Sir, they said, we would like to see Jesus. Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip, in turn, told Jesus. Jesus replied, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my heart is troubled. What shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Jesus goes back and forth on this, and I think I talked about last week, I'm actually doing a study, and I was kind of encouraging everybody else to kind of do a study as we approach Easter. Doesn't matter what it is. Just study the scripture leading up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And the reason we do that, because we already know the story, right? But the reason I'm doing that every year, and the reason I do that this year, is there's always something new that I pick up. Jesus goes back and forth on this idea of God, let it be done, because he's struggling with the manhood that has been thrust upon him. He's a man, therefore he's afraid. He sweats blood at one point. He's very afraid of this happening, but he knows it must be done. The other thing that I actually, just as a side note, came up with as I was studying the other day, I was telling Carrie Ann about this in the car, was that after Judas betrays Jesus, right, he gets the 30 pieces of silver, a lot of money in that kind of day, he actually tries to give it back, right? You know the story, he tries to give it back, and the religious leaders go, oh, hold on. It's your responsibility what you did. If you're going back on this now, that's up to you. We've already got what we wanted. He's dead now. So thank you. Judas, though, knows that he's done something incredibly wrong, and he goes and he hangs himself, and they are left with all this money that he scatters as he leaves. It's a crazy image. Judas just goes, how could I have done this? How could I have sacrificed my only friend and the Son of the living God? There is no way to go back on this. And he throws it at them and leaves and kills himself. And then there's a bit of a talk, and I don't think I've ever read this before, but the religious leaders are talking, and they're wondering to themselves, what should we do? Now we have 30 pieces of silver. And they go back and forth, and they're like, well, I guess we could give it to the temple. And one of them goes, oh, we can't do that. It's blood money. And then another one goes, oh, wait, but if it's blood money, we shouldn't even be associated with it at all. And then they come to the realization that this is so far against their religious beliefs, so far against their relational beliefs with God, that they have actually paid for the killing of someone else, that they really try to justify it. I encourage you to go and read that. It is the most interesting story, most satirical story I've read in the Bible so far. And that's something that I had never seen so far since doing this study. But this is something else, that Jesus goes kind of back and forth, struggling with the manhood of it all, that I should die, and I need to die. Father, your name must be glorified. These people don't need me to save them from the Romans. They need me to save them from themselves. That's what I need to do. And I found that that's just an interesting contrast. So I'll leave you with this. Everyone in the story has their own agenda. The disciples, it continually says the disciples did not understand what Jesus was talking about. They might have actually thought in the back of their head that Jesus was coming in a triumphal entry to Jerusalem to rid everybody of the Romans. They might have thought that too. The guy that had the donkey, I kind of wonder about him sometimes. If someone came up to you and asked for an animal that had done so much work for you and said, Jesus or God needs this today, what would you have done? I kind of wonder about that sometimes. Jesus had another agenda. Jesus wanted to save everyone not from the Romans. That would have been really convenient. Of course, we always see the convenience in front of us. But Jesus knew that and actually went, no, I am not your genie. I am not your fairy godmother. I am your parent. And your parent just doesn't go, oh, that's okay, yes, we'll get you that thing that you want because it will make you stop crying. Your parent doesn't do that. To a certain extent, yes, but a parent is supposed to stand there and go, no, you need to learn this hard truth because later in your life you're going to need this in your toolkit. And Jesus plays the role of the parent. But there's an instant gratification thing that's also gone into the church. I was playing at an Easter service a few years ago. I won't tell you what church it was at, but I was playing at an Easter service. And I began to realize a few things were bothering me, I guess. First, there was a lot of production involved. When people came in, we must have played to 1,000 people that day, and I don't really feel that anyone really worshipped. They sat there for the most part. They kind of looked at us. There weren't any, okay, stand up, sing this line with us, and that kind of thing. There wasn't any of that, like encouraging people to get into worship. There wasn't a worshipful mood, really. There was a lot of sound, and it sounded great. It sounded, like any rock concert you would go to, but that wasn't really what we were there for, I don't think. And in leading up to it, there were a lot of rehearsals. A lot of rehearsals. There were about 5 or 6 rehearsals for about 5 or 6 songs. And that kind of bothered me a little bit. And then when it was all done, I sat down with a friend of mine who was playing drums for us at the time, and he noticed that I had a troubled look on my face, and he said, hey, Geoff, what's going on? And I said, man, I don't know if we reached anybody today. That's a terrible thing, isn't it? On Easter, probably the most meaningful, one of the 2 most meaningful holidays of our faith, and I don't feel that anyone was reached. I feel that people got a lot of light shown in our face today. I feel that people that wanted the convenient, let's get out of church here. It's time. I feel like that kind of thing got met. You could get in, get your donut. It was a very packaged deal. Get in, get your donut, get your coffee, sit down, watch. Someone stands up and talks. You watch. You go home. Wasn't that great? Now you get brunch. I feel like that got accomplished really well. I mean, we were really efficient. We got those people out of there like 2 minutes early. But what became of that? It bothered me. It really bothered me. And
it still does.
It still kind of does. And that's, I don't think, what Easter is about. That's not what Palm Sunday is about. This is Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is about a big contrast. It's about a people, us, that only can see the thing in front of us and go, God, if you just removed that one thing, if you took it away, everything would be so much better. And Jesus comes in, not on a stallion, not surrounded by soldiers, not ready to take over the whole. He could have done that. He very well could have done that. He could have summoned all the angels he wanted to, and he could have rid the Romans from that oppressive rule. It's not a good thing if the Romans took over your town. He could have done that. It would have taken maybe a day, and if not less, and that entire place could have been cleared of Roman centurions. But he decided not to. He comes in on a donkey. People didn't get the hint still. They're laying down palm leaves, and they're laying down coats for him to walk on, like a king. That's what you do when a king comes in, a conquering king, right? He's going to come and rule this whole place. They didn't get it. They still didn't get it. And Jesus foretells and says, you won't get it until it's done. You won't understand until finally it's done. But if I die, it's kind of like the kernel situation. If I die, that kernel, that seed gets planted in the ground, and it sprouts, and much more comes of it. And if you like, back in the 90s, there was a book that came out, DC Talks, Voice of the Martyrs. And it's story after story of people that came, starting back right after that in Acts of the Apostles, when people decided to do what Jesus said, and they decided to lose their lives for him. It's story upon story of people giving up their lives to preserve their faith or to preserve the faith of others. And it's very, very powerful, and that is the ministry of Palm Sunday. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the fact that you don't solve the thing in front of us. You rarely solve the symptoms of the problem. What you're after is our heart. And I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that as we grow in our faith, that becomes more and more apparent. And as we come into this Easter season, I pray that the people that we bring to Easter services across this country wouldn't see a faith that's all about package deals and quick fixes. They would see a faith that you can't order on Amazon. They would see a faith that comes from